Where you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow.
This morning coming here was way different for me. I mean, for one thing, Ruth is not with me. I'm sorry for those of you who came, mainly to hopefully see her. It's just that logistics of the day and some of the things that are going on, I have to go somewhere else, she has to go somewhere else. That was part of the course. But then as I left, first I usually stop and get coffee out in Santa Cruz as I'm leaving. Well, they were training new baristas today. So it was like, how long does it take to put together a latte? I wish I could. And so I'm watching the time go there, and then thinking, oh, wow. And then as I leave there, I think, okay, now everything's good. And I get on the freeway, and there's semis on the freeway racing each other to pass. So that you get these big semis up there that are just one's just barely edging past the other one, and then kind of losing it, and can gain it again, and then again losing it, and meanwhile all the cars are piling up behind them, and I'm at the end of all of that. And I'm looking at this and saying, oh, this is not looking good. I mean, there was a series of these things. So I walked in here just before the service started this morning, and felt a little bit, come on, go off somewhere and kind of get myself put back together. But this whole idea of waiting and things that cause us to have to slow way down and disturb our idea of what the schedule should look like. About 10, 12 years ago, whatever it was, Ruth and I were doing this really cool thing. We were traveling in Europe, and before we went, we heard about something. We traveled around, Rick Steve, are you familiar with? He's a travel guy and stuff like that. And so he'd done a lot of reading in his books and stuff, kind of sync up to it. And one of the things he strongly encouraged was that everyone, if you're going to travel and see things, that you get what's called a museum pass. If you've ever traveled, this is a tip. Next time you go, you need to do this. Because this, for whatever fee it was, with this museum pass, whenever you went to any of the museums, galleries, churches, or anything that you want to go into, and if you've traveled, you've seen this. There's these long lines, particularly doing some long lines, kind of go out around the block and way down there somewhere like that, and people are waiting to get in. Well, with the museum pass, you walk past all those people and you simply hold up your hand, all the way down and go right in ahead of them. Now, for someone like me, this was like gold. I mean, it was worth going into all the museums just so I could walk past all the line and go right up to the front and say, museum pass? Right there. I've thought about it a lot since then, wishing that somehow in life it was possible to get a museum pass, just for life. So whenever you're having to wait for things, you say, no, it's good. Museum pass, I don't have to wait. Because I found that life is filled with waiting, just like you discovered. It's amazing how much time is consumed in just simply waiting. And as I've looked into the scriptures, it's filled with that. It's almost like God has a disregard for time and has no problem in having someone wait their entire life for a moment. And you go through all this and you're thinking, what's happening with that? Now look at the scriptures, that it's filled with people who had to wait. And often, most of us end up reading it, and we kind of blow through that. That someone had to wait, 7 years or something. They find they waited 7 years. I reduced it down to more of a granular thing of days. And now it changes everything. For example, Jacob, in waiting for the love of his life, Rachel, waited 2,700 days. Every day getting up and realizing I'm just one day closer. Sarah, childless, which in her culture was a huge thing. She waited over 27,000 days for a child. Meaning that each one of those days she had to wake up and realize again I'm childless. had to go into the world around her and have people looking at her and saying, what's wrong with you? Feeling the weight of that. 27,000 days. Even many of those with a promise. Moses waited in the desert for over 15,000 days. Having been at the pinnacle of one of the most powerful men in the entire world, was now a shepherd, wondering, has God forsaken me? Will there ever be anything in my life? 15,000 days he woke up and had to go through that process. Joseph waited in prison for over 1,000 days. David waited in the caves for God to fulfill his promises for over 5,000 days. The woman in the scriptures, the New Testament, the woman with the hemorrhage, had that for over 4,000 days. Mary Magdalene was tormented by demons for over 5,000 days. And I started looking at this and I think, the scriptures are loaded with this. We kind of step into these stories at a moment when something happens without seeing that all these days went before that, when people had to wait. Waiting is an inescapable part of life, as we all know in this room. I'm not sure what it is that you're wading through today, but you are. Some of you are wading through issues of health, wading through all the pain and the fear that comes with that, whether it's yours or a loved one. Some of you are wading through occupational uncertainty, wondering what's out there. Is there anything for me out there? Some of you are wading through financial distress. Some of you are wading through difficult people that you're in the context of it, and you just there. Some of you are single and you're waiting for somehow the right person to come along. Some of you are waiting for some kind of news, for something to change. But you're waiting. And it seems in the midst of that, as though, at times, as though God has simply forgotten us. Now, don't you care? I'm wasting all this time. And it's an inescapable part of life. When I have talked with friends or people that have some kind of ministry connection with their family or whatever, in the midst of the waiting, the comment that is most used in this is, well, God's just simply teaching you patience. Well, yeah, is there something more needed in the midst of this? Is God just simply saying, I want you just to learn to be still and wait? Yes, I think, but there's more to it. And with that in mind, I'd like us to actually look into a portion of Scripture that may give us some insight. I believe it does give us some insight into the art of waiting. It's in Colossians. Colossians chapter 1. It's a prayer that Paul prayed thousands of years ago, a couple thousand years. But I think it's a prayer that actually tumbles forward into this very room this morning, as though Paul was praying it for you and I. So listen to how he prays. This is Colossians chapter 1, starting in verse 9. He says, for this reason also, since the day I heard of it, since the day we heard of it, we have not ceased to pray for you and to ask that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will and all spiritual wisdom and understanding, so that you may walk in a manner worthy of the Lord, to please him in all respects, bearing fruit in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God, strengthened with all power according to his glorious might for the attaining of all steadfastness and patience, joyously giving thanks to the Father who has qualified us to share in the inheritance of the saints in light. What I'd like us to focus on to begin with is verse 11. Notice how he prays for them in the midst of their waiting. Strengthened with all power according to his glorious might for the attaining of all steadfastness and patience. I believe that that not only is waiting an inescapable part of life, I believe that waiting is also an essential part of the spiritual life. That waiting is never wasted on God. There's always something that is being developed inside it. I came across one person, I'm not even sure where I found this, but someone had referred to this as God's gracious ministry of delaying and depriving. There's almost a collision of words in that. God's gracious ministry of delaying and depriving. I found that as you look through the scriptures, it's a requirement for faith. Read it in Hebrews chapter 11 there. It's a requirement for that. It's also a classroom for character. And there are many places we can go on that. One of the places that I've been spending time in recently is in Romans 5, verses 3 and 4. It's a classroom. God uses this for greater purposes. But in this text here, I want us to notice some things that emerge out of this verse right here. He prays that they would be strengthened with all power, according to God's glorious might. Now, if I was to simply, the translators have at least been, in this particular translation, a way of trying to separate these words out. But it almost could be said this, that you would be strengthened with strength according to his strength. So it's kind of but it does divide out, because the first two terms are very similar. They're one's a verb, one's a noun. But this idea of strengthen. And the word that is used here on this first part, that you would be strengthened with power, basically similar, has to do with what could be described as potential power. The word that's used here is a word that means you've got the power here, but it's not necessarily accessed yet. In other words, it's available to you. It's kind of like a power outlet in my home. They're all over the place. They're not all used. But it's there. It's available to me. So he's praying that you would have this potential power that is available to you to use. But it's going to be up to you how to use it or to access it. And then he moves to the source of it. So you'll be strengthened with power according to God's glorious might. That's a different word. The word that's used of us is a word that has to do with potential power. But when he speaks of God's power, he's speaking of a power that is applied power. In other words, active and being used right now, continuously. It's God is the one who is actively applying his power all the time. And so we connect to that. We have the ability, or he's praying that we would have the ability to actually have this potential power that we recognize is tied to him, because everything ties to him. In the midst of waiting, part of the art of waiting is this idea of focusing on everything being sourced in God himself. The power sources in God. And everything we're going to see all tracks back to God. That's going to be where the key is. What separates us from everyone else. Those of us who have found redemption in Jesus. That we wait differently. So, he says that you would be strengthened with power, this potential, according to his glorious active power, his might. Then he says, for. In other words, here's where it's going to be applied. For the attaining of all steadfastness and patience. I'm not sure what your translation has. It might be a bit different. If it's a lot different, we need to talk afterward. But it should sound something like that. For the attaining of all steadfastness and patience. Here again, it's a couple of words that are very similar. So it's almost like you could say for the attaining of all patience and patience. It's just that kind of a thing. But there are different words here. And the difference is it's kind of fascinating. Because the first word that's used here for the attaining of all steadfastness, or whatever yours says on this, is a word that when it's used in the New Testament almost always has to do with circumstances of life. It's a word that literally, if you kind of took it apart, literally means to remain under. And it carries this idea of remaining under the weight of something. Now, if you live very long, which some of us have, you realize that an awful lot of life is this weight that comes on. There's all that comes with life. It's filled with all this stuff. It closes in from all these different sides. And this idea of waiting that's here, of steadfastness, the remaining under, is the idea of learning the art of living under the weight of circumstances of life. Now, some of you this morning come into this room and you've got the weight of the world on you. This word here is speaking to you. It's feeling that weight and still remaining under it. The art of remaining under the weight of circumstances. But Paul, as he articulates this prayer, includes a second word in it. Because waiting is not simply dealing with circumstances, the weight of those things. The word he uses alongside it, while steadfastness and patience, whatever your second word is a word that's almost always used in connection with people. It's a word that literally means to be long-suffering. You feel like you're long-suffering this morning? We've all got these people in our lives, right? We've all got people in our lives that, okay, I'll be around them. And you walk through life knowing it. Maybe you're related to somehow. Somehow you're working alongside someone, they're next door neighbor. The people that are just hard to be with. And so Paul, as he's praying, he brings in basically all of life in these two words. That we would be learning the art of being patient, of waiting in the midst of circumstances and in the midst of people, all put together. That this would be part of what marks us, that we've learned this art of waiting. And not just a matter of waiting until, but of waiting, of being in the midst of this and being okay being there. In the midst of circumstances that are unresolved. And perhaps there's no idea when it will ever be resolved. In the midst of relationships of other people in whatever form that comes in, not until somehow they're gone, but just being there. There's art to this. So you're thinking, so get on with it, Steve. What's the art? As you find in so much of the scriptures, it's the rest of the prayer that surrounds this. Because this is embedded in the middle of something. And the rest of it gives us insight into how to live, into the art of living. So let's back ourselves up and look at some of these things. He begins by praying that they would be filled with the knowledge of his will, with all spiritual wisdom and understanding. First insight is in the midst of waiting, part of the art comes from perspective. Realizing there's something bigger going on here. So he prays that they would get that picture of something bigger going on here. They'd be filled with the knowledge of his will, not just knowledge of his will for their next step in life, how to make a decision, but this larger picture of what God is doing. That they would have this understanding of the knowledge of his will with all spiritual wisdom and understanding. Would you get it? I understand there's something else going on, something bigger going on here. Let me give you a picture of it. Did you watch the Olympics? Ever watch it? If you didn't, I don't know what else you did, but the Olympics. In fact, this is a little side thing, part of this may anything off. But right before the Olympics started, our TV kind of went clunky. And so we went out and we got one of these bigger TVs. That's not that. Not quite, but pretty close. So now we were watching the Olympics, which is fun. We're way into that. And, anytime the Olympics comes up, I like to brag about the fact that I have a niece that is an Olympic champion. You didn't know that. Yeah. And she's in one of those events. It's actually considered the most difficult event in the entire Summer Olympics. but it's one that doesn't get a whole lot of press. It's not all that wonderful to watch. It was in two-person rowing. And in 2 consecutive Olympics, she won medals. And she is, I mean, right now she teaches or trains other Olympic champions. And so when you see that, most of those have been trained by her at some point along the way. Karen. And Karen's something. She's just this fun gal. But whenever, when you hug Karen, you know, it's like hugging a tree. There's no give. And when she hugs you, you know they've been hugged. It's a little recovery time afterward. Oh, okay. Got it. I've had a number of conversations over the years with Karen about that whole training process in the Olympics, which is it's a different layering of training than anything that we've ever experienced. But you talk about the idea that the coaches that they pair you with, the ones that they're not concerned about your comfort. They're concerned about something bigger. That if you want to win this thing, here's what you have to do. And to work with athletes down to the most minute details of every single movement they make, and how they take breaths, and how they think, and I mean, everything is geared around this. And so they're there to give you the knowledge and the insight into what it will take, and then to hold you to that so that you will become an Olympic champion. Well, part of this here, Paul is saying that you'll be filled with the wisdom and understanding here of how this works. Not as a bunch of great suggestions of how to kind of have a more enjoyable life, but there's a bigger thing going on here. The thing that what Paul refers to as the goal and the prize that is out there. And here's the insight into how it works, and so much of that is cultivated in the midst of waiting. It's perspective of understanding what's going on, this bigger picture that changes how we go through things. Now just pause for a moment and ask yourself, this one insight of this bigger picture, how would that change what you are wading through right now? Just kind of think about that for a moment. To realize there's something bigger going on. And the insight is here. And this is the bigger picture that Paul prays that they would get. Second insight comes out of the next verse. Second insight into, the first one has to do with perspective, realizing something bigger going on. The second one has to do with purpose. Look at what he says here in verse 10. So that you may walk in a manner worthy of the Lord, to please him in all respects, bearing fruit in every good work, and increasing in the knowledge of God. All coming down to this idea that the first one, as you notice in that, has to do with him, his will rather than mine. Second one has to do with the idea that it's about him that we even walk through this life. It's not about me. This desire to please him in all respects. And where that shows up is in the midst of waiting. That's a big thing to shape how we live. Not only understand there's something bigger going on, but how I do this, my desire is to please him in all respects, and to walk through this in a manner that will please him. Some years ago, I don't know, it was 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever years ago, I believe I told you a story about a friend of mine up in Oregon. I'm going to tell it to you again, because some of you, I'm sure, have long since forgotten. Others weren't here, so I'm going to bring it back again. But this guy's a hero of mine. For years, he cared for his wife, who had one of these debilitating diseases that was taking her life. They went on for years and years. When it first started, when they first had it diagnosed, it was just simply one of these things that was an inconvenience. She would stumble once in a while. She would not have the motor skills that she would want to have. that kind of thing. But as it progressed, it began to take more and more approval, to where she ended up having to have a walker and then a wheelchair, and then finally to a point where she couldn't get around at all, and had to be at home and have someone care for her, and ultimately do all the things for her, everything. And part of what makes this man such a hero to me, there's a whole bunch of things, but it's how he dealt with his wife during this time. He just passionately loved his wife. And he's a pastor. And so he started to adjust his schedule. And the whole church is watching this stuff. I mean, talk about stage. They're watching how the pastor's going to walk through this thing. But he would adjust his schedule so he could spend more and more time at home and be in the center of this care for his wife. And as it got more intense, they developed a rhythm every morning. This, if you have tissue, you want to get it out. But they had this rhythm every morning. And it was the same, and they knew it was going to go on. The words didn't change much on it, but it never got old to him. He said, never did it get old. One of the first things he would do in the morning is he would get her full attention. And that's what came up. So they were looking into each other's eyes. And so you need to hear this again from me today. You'd actually hear the words that I love you. And that'd be enough. I mean, right there is enough to kind of break you down in this thing. But then you would go on to the next part. I love you, and it will be my goal today to do something that makes your day. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the day is going to be. I don't have a plan yet. Somehow, I'm going to do something that makes your day. Isn't that something? And this guy's a rock star. I'll use that every once in a while at a retreat, and all the gals up there, they're crying. And all the guys go, oh, shoot. And that bar is so high up there, man, I'm never going to make that one, And his wife, not too long ago, passed away. So that story has shifted. But ever since I first heard that, I've used that as kind of a marker point in my own walk with Christ. So when I'm on my game, which I'm not always on my game, you know how that goes. When I'm on my game, I start my morning the same way that he did with his wife. Only I do it my way. And say, Jesus, as I'm looking into his eyes, Jesus, you need to hear this again from me. You need to hear me actually say this again. That I love you. And it will be my goal today to do something that I know pleases you. I don't know what it is, because I don't know how the day is going to unfold. I don't have a plan. The gauge of success in this day is going to be whether I can end it saying that I've done something that I know pleases you. So I can see your face, imagine your face looking at me and saying, yes, that's my guy. That's my son. Yes. That's my goal. I believe that's in the heart of a Paul. That that not only do we have this bigger picture, so we have some way of orienting ourselves in life and understanding waiting, but also so that as we enter the day, it's not just about me. It's not about how things are going to work for me and they're going to be more pleasant for me today, and will things kind of line up right with the crazy part. We should get on with the show, you know? Rather, in the midst of all those, there's all these opportunities that if I'm on, realizing that the goal is to please Him and to walk through this in a day that I know I've done that. And it changes how you wait. Now think for a moment. The things you're waiting through, how would this change how you wait through those things? Circumstances or people? See where I'm going with it? One more. Comes on the other side of it. So it starts at the very last word of verse 11 and moves into verse 12. It says, joyously giving thanks to the Father who has qualified us to share in the inheritance of the saints in light. So there's not only perspective, there's purpose, but then there's also pleasure in this thing. Anticipating God's faithfulness in it. Joyously giving thanks. Because in the midst of waiting, that's not our natural default mode, right? Just like this morning, I'm waiting for my default mode was, oh, hey, cool, take your time. It's more like you're imposing on me. When's this thing going to be over? Don't you get what's going on here? That's our default. But he says that, I'm praying that you would have this mindset that anticipates God's faithfulness, that sees things the way they actually are, and that you're joyously giving thanks for something that is true in the midst of something else that's true. And it's not just joyously giving thanks in general, but very specifically. Giving thanks to God who has qualified us to share in the inheritance of the saints in light. And it goes on then. For He delivered us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of His beloved Son, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. The idea is that I'm giving thanks that something so tremendous is true. In the midst of this, whatever waiting there is, whether it's in circumstances around people, whatever, it pales by comparison. That's if I get it right. I'm not sure how many of you have read this book. Have you read 1,000 Gifts? Anne Boskamp? You ever read this? Or you don't want to admit it? It's one of those books that I think it's a great book. You're either going to love it or hate it, one of the two. But Anne Boskamp, the book's about this idea that here's a woman whose life has not worked out the way she thought it would. And she discovers as a believer that one of the most powerful keys was the issue of gratefulness. Not just generalized gratefulness, but being grateful to the God of her redemption. And digging deep into it. And it's not, I'm grateful that I'm or that I have a home. I mean, those are all pieces of it. But being grateful for something much more profound than that. God has found me, that I'm His. I've been redeemed, that I've been sharing the inheritance with the saints here, and that I've been transferred out of the domain of darkness into His kingdom. That these bigger things, one of the driving statements she makes throughout that book, if you read it, you'll find this, the statement that we are wildly loved by God. And she enters the days with this as one of her echoes of thought. I am wildly loved by God. In the midst of life as it is. Imagine how that would change how you walk through whatever it is you're walking through. How do you wait through life as it presents itself? Waiting is an inescapable part of life. If you're hoping sometime it'll be over, sorry. It just is. For all of it. But it's not only an inescapable part of life, it's an essential part of the spiritual life, of how God shapes us. And the art of it, part of what separates us from anyone else, those of us who have found redemption in Jesus, is that we have this power available to us to walk through. And we access that power through, I believe, the other keys in this prayer. Through being filled with the knowledge of His will, His perspective. Through setting out to please Him in the midst of every day and every circumstance in the midst of those days. And through joyously giving thanks to the Father. Not so much for the circumstance, but for who He is and what He has done for us. This incredible, joyful thanks for what He has done. So let me pray for you right now. I want you to, as far as us praying in this moment here, to ask you to bring up to your thinking right now one of those things, issues, people, circumstances that you are waiting for. Just one of those. And just kind of hold them in front of you. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the privilege of being yours. Now, Father, as we walk through whatever it is you call us to walk through, as we wait, we ask that you would find us waiting differently. Knowing that waiting is not wasted. That this is a space in which you do some of your most profound work inside us. So we ask that you would give us, as Paul prays, a knowledge of your will. We ask that you would give us that longing to please you and a joyous thanks for what you have done.